She walked into the building as the CEO and got mistaken for a delivery driver. 10 minutes later, half the leadership was packing their things. If you had walked into the Beacon Point office plaza that Thursday morning in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, you wouldn't have looked twice at the woman stepping out of the black Lexus parked near the side entrance. She wasn't flashy, no bold colors, no loud jewelry, just a clean beige trench coat, low heels, a leather bag, and a soft but determined look on her face. That woman was Keisha Monroe, CEO of Monroe Health Strategies. She had flown in from Seattle the night before, landing just after midnight. No entourage, no press, just her, a notebook, and 2 pairs of sensible shoes. This visit wasn't scheduled, it wasn't planned, it wasn't about show, it was about truth. Monroe Health had recently acquired this regional office through a merger. There were reports, quiet ones, of high turnover, poor morale, and unspoken bias. Keisha wanted to see it with her own eyes, not filtered through polished reports and stiff Zoom calls. So she showed up. No cameras, no warning, no boardroom. Keisha opened the door and stepped into the lobby. The reception area was slick, modern, and chilly, both in design and in vibe. She smiled gently at the woman behind the desk, a 30-something white woman in a green blazer with an iced coffee half empty beside her keyboard. Before Keisha could say a word, the receptionist narrowed her eyes and said, "Deliveries go around the back. Vendors wait outside." There wasn't an ounce of curiosity in her tone. No question, just assumption. Keisha blinked. "Excuse me?" The receptionist let out a shallow sigh and motioned toward the glass doors. "This entrance is for staff. You'll need to wait outside. Someone will come get you." Now, Keisha could have corrected her, right there. She could have said, "I'm your boss's boss." She could have pulled rank, pulled a business card, or pulled her phone out to call the regional director, but she didn't. She looked down at her coat, then over at the staff badge station by the wall. Not a single photo on that wall looked like her. Instead, she said, "All right, I'll wait outside." She stepped back through the doors as casually as if she were leaving a grocery store. Out in the parking lot, Keisha walked to her car, got in, and set a 10-minute timer on her phone. 10 minutes. That's all. She looked at her reflection in the rearview mirror. Same calm expression, same smooth edges. But something behind her eyes was shifting. But before the timer buzzed, someone else pulled into the parking lot, and Keisha's real plan quietly began. Keisha didn't touch the radio. She didn't check her email. She just sat in silence, watching the office building from behind the windshield. She saw 2 men in dress shirts pass by the front glass, one holding a coffee, the other laughing too loudly. They didn't see her. Her fingers tapped lightly on the steering wheel, not in frustration, in rhythm, steady, intentional. At minute 4, she picked up her phone and sent a message to Miriam, her executive assistant. "Be at Beacon Point, use the side lot, bring HR." No punctuation, no explanation. Miriam didn't need one. She knew Keisha's tone. It meant this wasn't just a visit anymore. Keisha then pulled up a note on her phone, typing quickly, "Reception assumptions, no signage for vendors or visitors, staff photos and 0 diversity. Front desk engagement, non-existent." She added one more word at the bottom, bias. But she didn't feel angry. Not yet. She felt confirmed. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. It was just the first time it had happened here, under her own company's name. Back in college, a professor once told her, "You're going to intimidate a lot of people simply by existing." She thought it was a compliment at the time. Now she knew better. It was a warning. By minute 8, she saw the receptionist glance through the glass doors again. This time, she seemed to hesitate, maybe realizing her mistake, or maybe not. Either way, Keisha didn't move. 2 minutes later, right on time, Miriam's car pulled up. Out stepped a tall woman in slacks and a navy blouse, her long braids pulled into a knot. Beside her was Troy Benton, the director of human resources. Tall, older, salt and pepper beard, glasses always sliding down his nose. Keisha stepped out of her Lexus. "You ready?" she asked. Troy nodded once. "Always." Miriam just said, "Walk slow. Let them see you." Keisha smiled faintly. "I don't need to be seen. I need to be heard." They didn't storm the building. They didn't raise their voices. They walked through the front door like they belonged, because they did. This time, the receptionist stood up. Her smile came too quickly. Hi there, Keisha didn't stop, didn't flinch, just walked right past her and said, "Let's get a conference room, please." Miriam followed with quiet authority. Troy gave a brief, polite nod. The receptionist blinked and slowly sat back down, clearly trying to figure out what she had missed. Upstairs, word had already begun to spread. Someone whispered in the break room, "Is that the CEO? I thought she was supposed to come next quarter. Who called her in?" But Keisha wasn't here for rumors. She was here for reckoning. But before anyone could piece it all together, Keisha opened the door to a room full of managers, and silence fell like a dropped phone. The conference room smelled like dry erase markers and anxiety. Keisha stood at the head of the long oval table, her coat folded neatly over her arm, her briefcase untouched beside her. Miriam stood to her right, arms crossed. Troy stood near the door, holding a clipboard but saying nothing. For now. 8 people sat around the table, mid-level and senior managers from the Baton Rouge branch. No one had been told why this meeting was called. They knew only that the CEO, had just walked in like thunder before a storm. Keisha looked around the room slowly. Not one of them met her eyes. She cleared her throat, but her voice was calm, almost casual. "So," she said, "this morning I was asked to wait outside." Nobody responded. She let the silence hang. "I came in through the front entrance," she continued. "I introduced myself, or tried to. Before I could say a word, I was directed outside. No questions, no greeting, just told to wait." A man in a maroon polo, nameplate in front of him read Alex Granger, operations lead, shifted in his seat. "Miss Monroe, I'm not sure." She raised a hand, stopping him with one small motion. "No need to defend anyone yet, Alex. I'm just telling you what happened." Someone coughed nervously. Another manager, Brenda Owens, HR for the regional branch, started fidgeting with a pen, tapping it against her notebook like a broken metronome. Keisha took a slow step forward. "Now, here's the thing. I wasn't offended. I wasn't surprised either. It happens. More than it should." She paused. "But I was watching and listening." She walked to the whiteboard at the side of the room and picked up a marker. In big, clear letters, she wrote, "Assumptions, access, accountability." Then she turned around. "Those 3 words are why I'm here. And depending on how today goes, they may be why some of you aren't here next week." That's when people really started to shift. Brenda finally spoke. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry if you were mistaken for someone else," Keisha interrupted. "Sure, let's talk about that." She walked toward the window, then turned back. "I'm a black woman. I didn't come in wearing designer shoes or a badge, but I also didn't come in looking lost. And still, someone saw me and assumed, not one of us, definitely not in charge." She scanned their faces. "So I want to ask each of you who gets to belong here, who walks in and gets welcomed, and who gets watched, who's allowed to blend in, and who's asked to wait outside." A long silence followed. Keisha softened her tone just a little. "You don't have to answer right now, but if you're in management and you can't see the problem with what happened this morning, then you are the problem." Miriam uncrossed her arms and stepped forward, handing Keisha a printed sheet. "This is a snapshot of your office's exit interviews over the last 18 months, Keisha said, holding it up. "Notice anything?" She handed it to Alex, his eyebrows lifted. All the employees who left were... Keisha nodded. Black, Latino, Asian, LGBTQ+. Nearly every single one cited culture as a reason, said they didn't feel like they could grow here, that leadership was unapproachable, that the front office felt closed. Troy finally spoke. "That's why I'm here, to review every hire, every promotion block, every HR complaint. Some of those files are already on my desk." Nobody said a word. Keisha stepped back to the head of the table. "I didn't fly 2,000 miles to get an apology. I came for change. You've got 5 days, end of week. Show me who's committed to rebuilding and who's just collecting a paycheck." But before she left the room, she turned one last time and dropped a line that none of them would forget. Keisha paused at the door, her hand resting lightly on the knob. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't point fingers. She just said, "Culture starts at the front desk. If a stranger walks in and can tell what kind of workplace this is before anyone speaks, then so can I." Then she left. The room stayed still for a full 30 seconds after the door clicked shut. No one breathed deeply. No one moved. Back in her temporary office on the second floor, one of the glass-walled rooms with a view of the parking lot, Keisha took off her coat and sat down without a word. Miriam handed her a folder. "These are the files from Brenda's department. You'll want to see page 12. Keisha opened the file. Her eyes scanned quickly. Performance reviews, attendance logs, incident reports. She paused. 3 complaints, same supervisor, no follow-up. Troy leaned in. "You're looking at Carson Dillard, senior sales manager, promoted last spring, came from one of the firms we acquired." Keisha nodded slowly. "And these all came from women of color?" "Yep, 2 left. 1 transferred to Dallas." Keisha shut the folder and leaned back. "Schedule one-on-one meetings. I want to speak with those who are still here, staff, not management, confidentially." Miriam jotted it down. "But I want to start with the receptionist," Keisha added. Troy blinked. "You want to talk to her directly?" "Privately, no pressure, no threats." 20 minutes later, the receptionist, Chloe McNabb, according to her badge, walked hesitantly into the office, holding her phone in one hand and visibly unsure of what to do with the other. Keisha stood up. "Hi, Chloe. I'm Keisha." Chloe's eyes widened. I didn't realize this morning." Keisha smiled kindly but didn't move. "You can sit. I'm not here to scold you." Chloe sat down slowly, eyes darting between Keisha and the file folder on the desk. "I just want to ask you something," Keisha said gently. "What made you assume I wasn't staff?" Chloe shifted. I don't know. I just thought..." "It's okay. Take your time." Chloe swallowed. "You weren't wearing a badge. You didn't look like you were coming in for a meeting. I assumed you were a delivery person or something." "Do you always send visitors outside?" Keisha asked. "No, I mean, sometimes." "It depends." Keisha nodded slowly. "And what does it depend on?" Chloe hesitated. "I guess who they are." Keisha didn't raise an eyebrow. She didn't need to. "Have you ever told a white man in a suit to wait outside?" Chloe didn't answer. Her face did. "Okay," Keisha said calmly. "Thank you for your honesty." Chloe looked confused. "That's it?" "I'm not here to ruin your life," Keisha said, "but I do need you to think about this, because it's not just about you. It's about the message we send at the front door, the first face people see." Chloe nodded slowly, her face flushing pink. "I understand." Keisha stood up. "You've got potential, but potential doesn't mean much if it stays blind." As Chloe left, Troy looked in from the hallway. "You were gentle," he said. "She's not the whole problem," Keisha replied. "She's just the echo." But by the end of that day, it wasn't just Chloe or the managers feeling the weight. Word had spread to every corner of the building, and people started showing up at Keisha's door without being asked. By the time the clock hit 4:30, Keisha had met with 6 employees, none of them in leadership. A billing specialist named Rosa Jimenez sat with her hands folded in her lap, eyes darting to the glass wall. "They act different when you're not white," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Like we always have something to prove. Like we should be grateful just to be here." An IT tech named Terrence Bailey laughed once, bitterly, before saying, "I've been here 5 years. They still think I work in the mailroom." A young scheduling coordinator, Janessa Ford, had almost backed out of the meeting, but she showed up. "I kept asking for a mentor," she said quietly. "Got told to just watch how others move. But the others don't look like me, and when I asked questions, I got labeled difficult." Every voice added a piece to the puzzle Keisha already knew by heart, and every story carried the same undertone. We see everything, even when we say nothing. At 5:15, Keisha walked back into the same conference room she had visited that morning. The managers were waiting. This time, no one brought coffee. No one looked at their phones. There was no mistaking who she was now. She didn't sit. "I want to be clear about what I'm here to do," Keisha said. "This isn't a public shaming. This isn't a witch hunt, but it is a reset." She looked at Brenda first. "HR isn't a safety net if it only protects management. From what I've seen today, your department is more afraid of rocking the boat than protecting your people." Brenda looked stunned, but didn't argue. She turned to Alex. Operations can't run well if it's run through fear. I've heard how your team speaks about you when you're not in the room, and let me tell you, it's not respect, it's survival. Alex sat back, tight-lipped. Keisha walked toward the far end of the table. Some of you have been here so long you stopped seeing the cracks in the floor. That doesn't make you bad people. It makes you unfit to lead unless you're willing to do the work. She paused. So here's how this is going to go. Troy stepped forward and placed 2 folders on the table. Each of you will receive a personal evaluation, built not just on numbers, but on leadership behavior. Staff feedback will be taken seriously. Keisha and I will review each file. Promotions, pay raises, and even job retention will be reconsidered accordingly. There were gasps. One manager, Brian, in marketing, opened his mouth, then closed it again. Keisha looked at him. Got something to say? He hesitated. It just feels a little extreme. Keisha stepped closer. Extreme is what happens when talent walks out the door for the 3rd time in 6 months and no one asks why. Extreme is pretending unconscious bias doesn't exist while we quietly weed out everyone who challenges the comfort zone. Brian said nothing else. She softened her voice just a bit. You still have time, but time doesn't mean anything without change. Brenda finally spoke. What does change even look like at this point? Keisha looked at her directly. It looks like listening. It looks like hiring beyond your circle. It looks like checking yourself every time you assume someone doesn't belong. It looks like not mistaking silence for consent. She looked around the room once more. 5 days, she repeated. You've had 5 years to look away. Now you've got 5 days to look in. But as Keisha left the room, her phone buzzed, and the message waiting on the screen proved the fight for change was just beginning. The message on Keisha's phone was short, but sharp. Heard you're stirring things up in Baton Rouge. Corporate's asking questions. It was from Geraldine Nash, a board member known for playing politics like chess. Keisha stared at the screen for a moment, then typed back, Good, let them ask. I've got answers. She slipped the phone in her pocket and turned toward the elevator. Downstairs, word had fully spread. Staff who barely made eye contact the day before were now giving her small nods, subtle acknowledgments. Some grateful, some still guarded. It wasn't a parade, but it was movement. Inside the HR office, Troy was already making changes. Files were being reopened. Exit interviews previously marked closed were now pending review. One complaint, involving Carson Dillard, the sales manager, had already led to a temporary suspension. I spoke to him, Troy said quietly as Keisha entered. He didn't even deny the favoritism, just said, that's how sales works. Like that excused everything. Keisha sat down. How many others like him are hiding behind results? Too many, Troy said, but not for long. Miriam walked in with a printed list. Here's the updated staffing breakdown. Post-meeting. Keisha scanned it. 3 managers had already requested transfers. One, Brenda, had scheduled a follow-up with Troy to discuss stepping down. Another manager had sent an apology email to her team. A small step, but a step nonetheless. But what stood out most wasn't the names that moved. It was the names that didn't. Rosa, Terrence, Janessa, they were still here. Keisha looked up at Miriam. Set up monthly office hours. No agendas, no filters. If they've got something to say, they say it to me. Miriam smiled faintly. You sure you want that level of honesty? Absolutely, Keisha replied, because the truth doesn't scare me. Silence does. Later that evening, as the office emptied and the cleaning crew moved in, Keisha stood by the same glass doors she had been turned away from that morning. Chloe, the receptionist, walked by holding a stack of mail. She paused. I've been thinking about what you said earlier, Chloe said. I realized I've never had a black supervisor, not once. I think that's why I assumed what I did. Keisha nodded. That's why we're changing the system, not just scolding individuals. Chloe looked down. Do you think I can be part of that change? Keisha smiled. Only if you're willing to admit what you missed and do better tomorrow. Every day after that, too. Chloe nodded slowly. I'm willing. Then you're already doing more than most. They stood in silence for a second, the hum of the vacuum in the background. Chloe went back to her desk. Keisha turned to the parking lot. Her Lexus sat exactly where she left it. Only now, she didn't feel like the same person who had arrived that morning. But just as she reached for the door, her assistant called out, "There was one last meeting scheduled, and it wasn't on the calendar." The lights in the small meeting room flickered slightly as Keisha walked in. Only one person sat inside, hunched slightly, eyes on the table. It was Janessa Ford, the youngest staffer Keisha had met that day, just 24, barely 2 years on the job, and already thinking about leaving. Not because she wasn't good, she was excellent, but because she felt invisible. "I'm sorry to bother you again," Janessa said quickly. "I didn't know if I should come back." Keisha sat down. "You're not bothering me. What's on your mind?" Janessa hesitated, then she said, "No one's ever made me feel like my voice mattered here. Not really, and I didn't want to miss a chance to speak before you left." Keisha leaned forward. "You've got the floor." Janessa nodded slowly. "I don't want to leave. I want to grow here, but I'm tired of pretending, tired of laughing at jokes that make me cringe, tired of dimming myself just to not seem too much. I know I'm smart. I know I can lead. I need someone to see it before I burn out trying to prove it." Keisha didn't speak right away. She let the weight of those words land. Then she said softly, "I see it. I've seen it in every sentence you've said to me. But your job isn't to prove yourself to people who never learned how to see you in the first place. Your job is to know your worth and use it. Even when they act like they can't hear you, speak anyway." Janessa wiped her eyes, embarrassed. "Sorry, I didn't mean to." "Never apologize for caring," Keisha said firmly. "You keep showing up with that kind of honesty, and I promise, you'll rise. And if they don't lift you, I will." Janessa nodded, her voice cracking. "Thank you." After she left, Keisha sat there for a while alone, staring at the wall. Not everything would change overnight. She knew that. Some people would leave, some would resist. But seeds had been planted, and seeds don't ask permission to grow. The next morning, Keisha boarded her flight back to Seattle. She didn't scroll social media, didn't check in with corporate. She opened her notebook instead, flipped to a blank page, and wrote at the top, "The front door test. Who do we let in? Who do we keep out? What story are we telling before we ever speak?" She closed the book and smiled to herself. This wasn't just about one office in Baton Rouge. It was about every invisible door people walk through every day. The ones guarded by assumption, habit, and fear. And sometimes, all it takes to crack them open is a woman who refuses to wait outside. We all walk through doors people think we don't belong behind. Some of us are told to wait. Others are waved through without question. But the truth is, leadership isn't about title or power. It's about seeing what others miss and refusing to stay silent. If this story hits something in you, share it. Talk about it. Ask yourself, what assumptions have I made today? And more importantly, what can I do to make someone feel seen? Because no one should ever have to earn their humanity at the front desk.